Speaker of the House, they are not extensions of the executives, guardians of the legislature. We know that in the Caribbean, this has been recognized. The Speaker, in particular, functions consistent and independently with the rights and privileges of the Commonwealth. Indeed, Parliament functions as a people's body
Testing. 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 Order. Order. Indeed, it is my privilege and my pleasure to welcome you to the first session of today. Our moderator for the session is the Honorable Claudius J. Francis. And I was actually supposed to be moderating the session, but when I realized that he was coming, I gave it up to someone older, wiser, and more distinguished than myself in the presence of President Claudius Francis. So before I commence, I just want to read for you his biography so that you can see the strength behind him. Claudius J. Francis is an insurance loss adjuster, consultant, and arbitrator by profession, and the managing director of the firm Francis, Roseman & Co. Limited. He is the current president of the Insurance Council of St. Lucia and is now serving his 18th term in office. He is also the immediate past president and founding president of the Association of Insurance Councils of the OECS. Additionally, Mr. Francis is a founding member and 5-term president of the Insurance Institute of St. Lucia, Incorporated. He is the holder of a certificate in hospitality management, a diploma with distinction in principles and practice of insurance, a certificate in fire and accident insurance, and a certificate in evaluation of electrical systems for fire hazards. He is also a member of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Canada. Mr. Francis is a founding member of the Association of Insurance Institutes of the Caribbean and served as the body's Secretary-Treasurer, the first St. Lucian to hold a regional insurance position. As a consultant and arbitrator, Mr. Francis' services are sought locally and regionally, and in 1993, he wrote an opinion on the question of how evidence given by expert witnesses is to be received by a tribunal of court of law, as well as the applicability of English law in St. Lucian's jurisdiction. That opinion was unanimously affirmed by the OECS Court of Appeal and has since been applied several times throughout the member states of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, most notoriously to free a convicted murderer. Mr. Francis is a host of the Helen Television Services Helen FM 100 talk show, Straight Up, as well as a commentator and writer on social and political matters. He has represented St. Lucia in table tennis, volleyball, and, get this, martial arts. He is also a sporting administrator, having served as president of the National Council of Sporting Associations, president of St. Lucia Table Tennis Association, president of the Windward Islands Table Tennis Association, president of the French West Indies Table Tennis Association, president of the Castries Football Council, and president of St. Lucia Softball Cricket Association, among others. He is an internationally qualified table tennis umpire and was a member of the St. Lucia Olympic Committee for 8 years. Mr. Francis is the past chairman of the Disciplinary Committee of the St. Lucia Calypsonians Association and a former member of the St. Lucia Football Association's Disciplinary Committee and a current member of the St. Lucia Calypsonians Association Disciplinary Committee. He served for 8 years as a member of St. Lucia's Electoral Commission He is a member of the Electoral Commission of Latin and Central America and the Caribbean, and was part of the International Observers Team, which oversaw the 2008 Puerto Rico and United States of America general elections when the former President Barack Obama was elected. Being only one of 2 Caribbean nationals out of a team of 40 international observers. Well done. He has also observed elections in Antigua and Barbuda, Panama, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Guatemala, Honduras, and the United Kingdom. He was a member of St. Lucia's Civil Code Reform Committee, as well as a former chairman of Sports St. Lucia, Inc., Incorporated, and a former director of Cricket World Cup St. Lucia, Incorporated. He also served as press secretary to the former Prime Minister, Dr. Kenny Anthony, and lectures in insurance law and ethics on a part-time basis. He was appointed as senator on the advice of the Prime Minister on the 29th of December 2011 and elected president of the St. Lucia Senate on the 5th of January 2012, a position that he held until July 2016. In 2015, he was elected chairman of the St. Lucia Labour Party, position he held until international duties caused him to demit office in 2018. In 2019, he was elected chairman of the Special Olympics, St. Lucia, and 17th of August 2021, he was elected Speaker of the Senate House of Assembly. He is a member of Parliamentary Board of Directors and a former director of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. Indeed, Speaker Francis is a Renaissance man, and I leave you in the best of hands. Let's give him a clap.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. And I'm happy that you informed all present how I was ambushed last evening to moderate the session. Well, even as I sat there, I got another ambush. The technical people waited until I had said all my loving words to the Speaker of St. Kitts, and then they came to tell me that the mic was on. But thank you very much, and thank you, delegates. I've been asked to moderate on this session relating to climate change. And climate change is perhaps the biggest threat to the long-term development of small island developing states, such as ours. In fact, the threat is so serious and the impacts so widespread and profound that I believe we now need to stop talking about climate change and speak about the climate crisis. The term climate change gives the impression that the process is gradual and that we have time to adapt. The reality is the climate crisis is already affecting every facet of the economic, social, and environmental landscape in the Caribbean and the wider community. So we do not have much time. The hurricanes are becoming more excessive and more frequent, so we don't have time. To present to you the first presenter on this topic is the Speaker of the National Assembly of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Lenine K. Blanchett. She serves as Speaker of the National Assembly of St. Kitts and Nevis, where she has become a symbol of youthful leadership. Obviously, I'm reading that for the first time, this youthful thing. Principled governance,
and inclusive public service. She is widely recognized for her ability to modernize parliamentary practices while maintaining the dignity of the House. She holds a bachelor's degree with honors in criminal justice from Monroe University in New York, 2008, a Bachelor of Laws from the University of the West Indies Cayville campus, 2015, and a legal education certificate from the Normal Manley Law School in Jamaica. She was called to the bar in 2017 and has since demonstrated an unwavering commitment to the rule of law and the fair administration of justice. Her professional journey in the ministry began in the Ministry of National Security and later as Crown Counsel, where she prosecuted criminal matters before the Magistrates Court, the High Court, and the Court of Appeal. In 2022, she established her own practice, Blanchett Law Chambers, serving as founder and lead counsel. This experience afforded her a balanced perspective on governance, law, and the needs of her community. Speaker Blanchett's leadership extends far beyond the courtroom. She is president of the Aces Netball Club, a member of the St. Kitts and Nevis Sports Council, and a partial sponsor of the Keon Football Club. These roles reflect her dedication to youth empowerment, community development, and sporting excellence. On October 25th, 2022, she was elected Speaker of the National Assembly, becoming the youngest Speaker ever elected to the House and only the second female to hold this office since independence in 1983. Her tenure has been defined by innovation and inclusivity, the introduction of sign language interpreters, the appointment of the former president of the National Youth Parliament Association as deputy clerk to strengthen the youth voice, and environmental leadership by banning the use of plastics in Parliament, with water now being served from glass pitchers in observance of the Sustainable Development Goals. Her guiding philosophy remains clear, unambiguous, and inspiring. And it is this: the measure of success is not speed, but the determination to endure and finish strong. Colleagues, I give you Speaker, the Honorable Lenin K. Blanchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Distinguished colleagues, fellow parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's afternoon. Good afternoon. My apologies. So last week, when I was given the tentative schedule for this week's program, I was slated to present later in the week. On Friday, I realized that I was given the task of being the opening batsman. Now, I must tell you, I don't have the agility of Chris Gayle. I am more so like a Shiv Narayan Chandapal type of batsman. And so I am steady, slow, and I wear you down. But nonetheless, we proceed. It is a privilege to address this 47th Regional Conference of the CPA-CAA region. I am honored to speak on the topic, Regional Parliamentary Cooperation and Coordination to Achieving Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. To my mind, the SDGs are not just aspirational words on a paper. For the Caribbean, they are a matter of survival. They shape how we educate our children, power our homes, protect our ecosystems, and ensure fairness and prosperity in our societies. Colleagues, parliaments are uniquely positioned to transform the SDGs from vision to action. We legislate, we allocate, We are supposed to oversee, and we hold governments to account. At the national level, this means embedding the SDGs into budgets and laws. At the regional level, it means pooling our experiences and ensuring that progress is not uneven. In 2017, CARICOM statistics identified 113 core indicators as regional priorities out of more than 200 global SDG indicators. This was a deliberate recognition that our limited resources must be focused where impact is greatest, in line with our development plans and realities. Now, why does regional cooperation matter? It matters because it is our challenges that are shared. And so our responses must be coordinated. It matters with regard to climate change. Rising seas and stronger hurricanes respect no borders. The work with the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center and the Green Climate Fund demonstrates how coordinated regional responses can help us access finance, conduct vulnerability assessments, and build resilience. Importantly, parliaments have already begun legislating for climate resilience. Barbados' Climate Change and Carbon Trading Act of 2022 creates a framework for carbon markets, while Jamaica's Disaster Risk Management Act strengthens preparedness and risk reduction. It matters with regard to economic resilience. The pandemic exposed a myriad of structural weaknesses across our small economies. Regional cooperation in trade, finance, and innovation is essential to our recovery because it is still ongoing if we're to be realistic. The CARICOM Financial Services Agreement is one example of how harmonized legal frameworks can support economic integration and resilience. It also matters with regard to human development. Whether it is education, migration, or health, or issues are regional in scope. Collaborative parliamentary action allows for better outcomes. In health, the passage of the HIV and AIDS Prevention and Control Act in several OECS parliaments illustrate how coordinating lawmaking supports vulnerable groups and advances public health in line with SDG 3. As small states, colleagues, our unity amplifies our voice. Collectively, we can shape global conversations on climate, financing, and sustainable development. So how do we translate cooperation into concrete action? 3 areas stood out from my research. Firstly, regional legislative alignment. Where feasible, we should harmonize laws, particularly on renewable energy, digital governance, or anti-corruption, so that our frameworks are not fragmented. There are good precedents. I'll give a few examples. The Barbados Electric Light and Power Act of 2013 opened the electricity sector to renewable energy producers, setting an example of how legislation can advance SDG 7, which is affordable and clean energy. In Guyana, the Natural Resource Fund Act of 2021, which was later amended in 2023, created a transparent framework for managing oil revenues in support of sustainable development and fiscal responsibility. In Trinidad and Tobago, the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act 2015 strengthened accountability and transparency in government spending, advancing SDG 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions. Secondly, stronger committees and data systems is another area where we can collaborate. In St. Kitts and Nevis, our first voluntary national review was presented to the UN in 2023 with support from the UNECLAC and the UN Resident Coordinator's Office. This exercise underscored the importance of good data and coordination. And if we're real again, we will admit that data collection, firstly, and storage in our region is woefully lacking. In fact, when I was trying to do my research for this, it was so difficult. So that is an area for us to improve on regionally. A proposed National Sustainable Development Coordination Committee in St. Kitts ensured that interministerial cooperation, with involvement from civil society and the private sector did that very thing, pooling our data, energies, and storage of information together. Such national examples can be scaled regionally. And lastly, by sharing accountability. Pooling resources from regional progress reports can create a culture of peer accountability. The voluntary local review currently being developed by Nevis may become the first of its kind in the Caribbean and could serve as a model for other countries. Now, my fellow women, as women leaders, we have a critical role in this journey. The SDGs themselves affirm gender equality as both a goal and a driver of all other goals. Our voices are essential in ensuring that the regional SDG agenda addresses inclusivity, fairness, and interregional responsibility. The Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians Network is a living example of how cooperation strengthens impact. Now, there are some challenges we must face honestly. We know what the barriers are: limited financing, competing national interests, capacity gaps in smaller legislatures, sometimes political rivalries. Yet, these challenges can be mitigated. For example, non-traditional financing such as agreements with the Afrexim Bank and partnerships through Africa CARICOM summits are helping our region expand resources for education, agriculture, and infrastructure. These creative approaches show that cooperation yields opportunity, but we must admit that we have those gaps. Colleagues, 2030 is less than 5 years away. The clock is ticking. We must pass legislation that embeds SDGs into national and regional priorities. We must demand that budgets reflect climate resilience, renewable energy, health, and education. We must establish regional mechanisms for monitoring and accountability, and we must embrace innovative financing and partnerships. The UN Multi-Country Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework of 2022 to 2026 provides a roadmap for focusing on economic resilience, equality, climate adaptation, and the rule of law. But as we discussed on the weekend, frameworks mean nothing. They mean little without parliamentary leadership to bring them to life. In closing, my colleagues, the SDGs are a promise to our children, a promise that their future Caribbean will be sustainable, equitable, and resilient. by deepening cooperation across our parliaments, we can ensure that when 2030 arrives, we will not be explaining why we failed to deliver, but rather celebrating how we succeeded. Let us act boldly, work together, and make this vision a reality. Thank you kindly for so listening.
Thank you, Speaker Blanchard. Our second presenter, at 37, Jamal Strawn is the youngest member of Parliament and a dedicated representative for the constituency of Nassau Village. His visionary leadership and unwavering commitment to community development have made him a formidable force in public service. Serving as the Parliamentary Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Strawn has demonstrated exceptional leadership in his first term, quickly establishing himself as an effective and respected leader. A proud son of Nassau Village, he is the cherished child of the late Arnold Strawn and Deborah Strawn, and the devoted father of Mackenzie and River Strawn. Mr. Strawn holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice and Pre-Law from the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, along with 2 master's degrees from the China Foreign Affairs University in Beijing. He is currently pursuing his doctorate at Walden University, furthering his commitment to leadership excellence. Mr. Strawn's unwavering dedication to Nassau Village has driven impactful initiatives in community infrastructure, economic empowerment, and youth development. His visionary leadership has fostered significant progress, positioning the constituency for sustainable growth and transformation. Through his tireless efforts, he has become an irreplaceable figure in Nassau Village's revitalization, inspiring lasting positive change that will resonate for generations. Colleagues, help me welcome the Honorable Jamal Strawn.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Mr. Moderator, fellow parliamentarians, Bahamian governmental officials in your lofty position. Mr. Moderator, I was a bit concerned with speaking after Madam Speaker, because I know normally the Speaker has the final say, right or wrong. But it does give me joy and immense pleasure to present on this particular topic today. Now, the beauty of going after such a thorough presentation is that all of the nuts and bolts have already been squeezed and also turned. But my particular position is one of inspiration. My position as we go forward is really a message that echoes generationally. The talk shop on climate change must end. The talk shop on climate change must end. The time to act is now, and we must all gear ourselves up for implementation. Today I stand before you not just as a representative of the Bahamas, but as a passionate advocate for a cause that transcends borders, a cause that beckons us to unite in the face of adversity and embrace the promise of a sustainable future. The Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, are not merely aspirations, colleagues. They are more of a moral compass, a guiding light leading us towards a horizon filled with hope, with opportunity and resilience. The Bahamas, as you would have seen, is a paradise blessed with breathtaking landscapes and a rich cultural heritage. It is also a nation grappling with challenges that threaten our very existence. As a small island developing state, we are acutely aware that our precious resources are dwindling, that coastal erosion and climate change loom large over our shores, and that the economic and social disparities cast shadows over each of our communities. But amid these challenges lies our great strength, the unwavering spirit of a people, our capacity to rise above most adversity. Our journey to achieving the SDGs by 2030 is a shared odyssey, colleagues, a collective quest that demands our utmost dedication and collaboration. We cannot afford to operate in silos, and we've heard this almost seemingly cliche statement, operating in silos, but yet we continue to do so. Instead, we must forge powerful alliances and strengthen existing ones, crafting a tapestry of cooperation that interweaves our diverse experiences and untapped potential. Our regional parliaments, the heart of our democracies, must be the vanguard of this movement, championing legislation that reflects our commitment to a sustainable future. Let us evoke the spirit of unity that is our Caribbean heritage. Together, we have weathered storms, colleagues, both literal and metaphorical, that have tested our resilience. Our forefathers fought bravely for freedom and self-determination, and now we must harness that same courage to confront the existential challenges posed by climate change, economic inequality, and social injustice. Colleagues, we owe it to them and to the generations yet unborn to cultivate a sustainable environment where prosperity and equity flourish as one. The urgent need for regional cooperation cannot be overstated. It is through cooperation that we amplify our voices on pressing issues. Colleagues, climate change, economic sustainability, and social equity. We must create a robust network of communication and support, sharing best practices, successes, and failures alike, so that no nation must navigate these turbulent waters alone. The time for collaboration is now, and we are stronger together. As stewards of our nation's futures, we must embark on a journey of inquiry and engagement, actively listening to the voices of our citizens, their aspirations, their fears, and their dreams. They must all be woven into a fabric of legislative agendas. Participatory governance is a powerful tool that engenders ownership and accountability, ensuring that our pursuits do not merely reflect lofty ideals, but resonate with the lived experiences of our people. In the Bahamas, we have initiated promising ventures aimed at harnessing renewable energy, conserving our marine ecosystems, and promoting sustainable tourism. Yet, these initiatives are but seedlings waiting to sprout. To nurture them into thriving trees that bear fruit, we must foster an environment ripe for regional collaboration. We must advocate for innovative financing mechanisms that transcends traditional boundaries, catalyzing investments, colleagues, that directly target the SDGs. Together, we can create regional funds that empower our nations to overcome adversity and pave the way for a brighter, more sustainable future. Colleagues, we would recall the regional efforts being made. CARICOM has established a framework for SDG implementation. There are ongoing efforts to create regional SDG data hubs for shared monitoring and reporting. However, we all must acknowledge that there is room for improvement. We need stronger mechanisms, colleagues, for regular knowledge sharing and collaborative problem solving amongst our parliaments. I propose, colleagues, to establish a formal Caribbean Interparliamentary SDG working group to facilitate this. I started by saying that our issue is not simply legislating. We must also look at the implementation's vantage point and standpoint where most of our parliaments seem to lack and fall short. We must look at innovating financing and legislation. Achieving the SDGs requires both supportive legislation and adequate funding. If we look at noteworthy developments, we see the CDB, Caribbean Development Bank's allocation of $300 million towards SDG-related projects. Colleagues, when we look around the region, we also see best practices. We see Barbados' issuance of blue bonds to finance marine conservation efforts. In the Bahamas, we have introduced the Carbon Credit Trading Act in 2022, aligning with SDG 13, and our development bank has launched a $25 million SDG-aligned funding program. There is growing interest, colleagues, regionally, in creating an SDG fund to pool resources for larger scale initiatives. This could provide vital support for projects that exceed individual national capacities. When we look at the areas of education and inclusive governance, we must have long-term success, and that is predicated on our youth and ensuring that inclusive decision-making is occurring. Current initiatives in the Bahamas and also regionally include the University of the West Indies' introduction to SDG-focused curriculum. We see Trinidad and Tobago's Youth Parliament program. In the Bahamas, we have also integrated SDG education into our national curriculum. We've launched the National Youth Parliament program and initiated a participatory budgeting in Nassau, New Providence. These efforts, colleagues, are all aimed toward building a stronger generation, equipped to carry forward the SDG agenda and to ensure diverse voice sharing and voices that shape our sustainable development strategies. Colleagues, noting all of the efforts that have taken place thus far, let us not lose sight of the importance of education in this pursuit. Empowering our youth with knowledge and skills they need to become change makers is crucial. By investing in education, we lay the groundwork for generational development that will inherit not just our challenges, but our successes. Together, we must create educational frameworks that emphasize sustainability, critical thinking, and innovation, so that our young leaders can guide and be guided towards a future where prosperity is both equitable and sustainable. As we look toward 2030, let us carry forth our collective vision with a renewed sense of purpose. Let us commit to breaking down barriers and fostering inclusivity in everyday aspects of our work, ensuring that marginalized voices are heard and considered in our decision-making processes. Our achievements will be measured not by the goals we achieve, but by the lives that we elevate and the communities that we empower. In conclusion, colleagues, let us unite and ignite the flames of collaboration and cooperation. Together as a united Caribbean, we can rise above our challenges and create a future where every individual thrives amidst the beauty of our islands and the riches and richness of our cultures. The SDGs are not merely a destination. They are a journey we embark upon, hand in hand, heart in heart. I urge each member of this honorable assembly to take the moment to rekindle our commitment to cooperation, to harmony, and shared progress. Let us seize the unique opportunity to build a legacy of sustainability and sustainable development that echoes through the corridors of time, inspiring future generations to continue the work that we have begun. I end where I begin. The talk shop must end, and the time to act is now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jamal. And just some housekeeping notes. All of the mics are on. So if you wish to speak, make sure the mic is turned towards you. Just raise your hand, we'll acknowledge you, and just turn the mic towards you. I've also been informed that Trinidad and Tobago is going to join us by Zoom in a little bit. So we're taking a presentation from them as well. So the floor is open. Whilst we wait someone to ask a question, let me just add that a study by UWE in Jamaica has already predicted there will be a 25% reduction in precipitation in the Southern Caribbean, with over 200 days annually being excessively warm. That will make climate change a health issue as well. No water, all sorts of diseases can come up. So climate change is not just infrastructural, it's also a health issue.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes.
While the others get their questions together, I am, Senator Alicia Williams-Grant, President of the Senate, Antigua and Barbuda. I was very intrigued by the presentation of the Honorable Member from Bahamas, particularly as it relates to the Carbon Credit Trading Act. I would be very interested to know how the mechanism operates within that framework. When was it passed and how has it been going?
No, just put the mic towards you.
Oh, thank you. So, like I said, Madam President, it was passed in 2022. The mechanism has been successful, of course, and the Prime Minister just announced that we've now gone to market. So it's just it's a matter of evaluating how much the carbon credits actually are. So it's all lobbyist and ongoing from the technocrat standpoint. But it is one that has variables in that the evaluation differs based on who's doing the evaluation.
So there's an application process, or it's floated. How is it function? How does it
The
operate?
actual mechanism?
Yes.
Well, the mechanism itself, I would have to, of course, check on that with the technocrats. But from my layman vantage point, I know that there was 2 studies conducted, one by a university that did an evaluation, and of course they approached the government and give a monetary evaluation of the resources themselves over a period of time, and then that's also taken to the UN to also go to market. But I think it is a United Nations body that actually does it. But I can and will revert.
Thank you kindly.
Yes, sir.
So now, okay. Working together as a region, we'll always have gaps. So either of you can speak to how do we overcome gap number 1, human resources, gap number 2, financing.
Testing. So not used to this. Testing. No, we can't press. It just, it's controlled at the back. Hello? Very well. From my research, there is a gap where financing is concerned. And so one of the things that I've discussed with my minister, the Honorable Dr. Joel Clark, who is the Minister for Climate Change, is the fact that we as a region need to become a bit more innovative with our financing. We need to outsource a bit. And as I would have mentioned in my presentation, there is scope for partnership, particularly with banks through the Africa CARICOM summits, and as well as the Afrexim Bank. Recently in St. Kitts Nevis, we had a delegation from Nigeria that visited. Part of that delegation was a score of banks, and that would have allowed for us to explore innovative financing. One of the other areas that I think we need to focus on in the region is the sharing of information and training where applications for grants are concerned. There are some countries who have persons, and this is sharing human resource as well. There's some persons who are a bit more versed in the application process for grants. And so if we are able to share that information, it would allow for our brothers and sisters to be able to attempt to at least apply for these grants that are universal. One of the things that I saw our minister did was she had a conference with persons from different institutions in her ministries, and she was actually teaching them how to properly apply for grants, because that is an area that she specialized in prior to becoming the minister. And so she shared that information because from the discussion, it appeared as though it was a bit top-heavy in terms of where the application process was. She would have to personally apply for these grants because she had the skill set that was needed for that. And so by teaching various point persons in the different ministries how to apply for grants, because apparently it is a science, it allowed for a spread of the information and a spread of the human resource where that is concerned. So my 2 points would be innovative financing and sharing of the resources where education and training is concerned.
If I may underscore, and thank you for the question. We all know that financing remains a serious issue, especially for countries like the Bahamas because of our categorization and graduation normally. So that excludes most of us from accessing certain funds and grants, right? So with the issues of human capacity and financing, you have to go to the international market. Our Prime Minister has highlighted the disproportionality and the disparities as far as the the loan percentage as far as how much a small land development state with particular leaders are given as far as the percentage on the money for rebuilding, mitigation, and adaptation, right? So there's one challenge confronting the elephant in the room, that is the disproportionality and the disparities with financing, accessing financing, and then two, human capital. There's always been a critique of the region that there aren't enough experts in the region themselves. So we tend to have to go and educate a number of persons, but we always say we want to educate the educator and have them come home and have them build capacity. But that building of capacity tends to not happen because you have the educator who is headhunted and they stay wherever they are. So what I would humbly suggest would be, like I said, a working group that specifically looks at grant writing, composed of multiple individuals or members from the region, and allocate a body that is possibly funded jointly so that we can stop these gaps, right? We've already started engaging the Afrexim Bank for the same affordable financing, because to go to the IDB and to go to those particular World Bank lending institutions, we have found that we pay too much money to borrow money. So the only way to do that is regional cooperation. One, with the establishment of a body that builds capacity for human capacity and knowledge sharing or grant writing. And then two, to explore our options as far as who's willing to loan us money at an affordable rate.
If I can just add that in St. Lucia, we earlier this year legislated a sovereign wealth fund for climate change. So that's one way of going about it. Any further questions?
My question was, should the UN also play a role?
Could you put the microphone?
Sorry, yeah, the follow-up question was, what role should the UN play, if any, in terms of financing?
As far as I know, they only act as a mediator. So with the creation of the fund, it's normally, if I'm not mistaken, contributory and voluntary. So they contribute as much as they want to the Green Fund or other international bodies, and you withdraw from them via grants, via the grant writing process. So the UN is just really a facilitator, but it takes members to actually contribute to the actual fund. And the monies in the fund is where we find the majority of the problem, or lack thereof.
If I may add briefly as well, advocacy is also important because that funding is shared and or stored based on what we say our priorities are. And so again, uniting allows us to have a collective voice in terms of what our priorities should be based on our present circumstances, and then that would also inform where the monies go in terms of grants. Thank you.
Yes?
Thank you. I just want to also echo my support to the suggestion that Honorable Jamal made as it relates to some sort of action item from this regional meeting. I was sharing yesterday with the ladies that, you know, the occasions that I have attended these regional meetings, we share a lot of useful information, but I don't really feel like we walk away with next steps. So it would be nice to hear what that would look like. I know that Honorable Lenine also spoke about the importance of human capital sharing and knowledge sharing, especially as it relates to some of these applications for grant funding. So for me, I just would like to, on behalf of the Cayman Islands, because some of you might know, we don't fall into the category of the small islands developed SIDS. We don't fall in that category, neither do we fall under as a member of CARICOM. So it would still be nice to lean into all of those who are here on how we can continue to advocate and move forward with reaching our goals as well.
Thanks. That's an excellent idea, but I just want to caution that the next session deals with the separation of powers. The reality is, many of us as presiding officers have an overinflated view of our authority. The truth is, whether we like it or not, as much as the legislature should be the primary body, the people in charge are the executive. So I'm not sure we can, as regular members here, give that kind of commitment. We need to go back to the executive and then put it forward. But I am very, very sure of my limited role. I don't overstate my importance at all. And the reality is, we pass the money bills, the executive spends it. And it's the executive that really holds the authoritative final say. So I'm not sure Speaker Blanchett, Jamal, or myself can, or any one of us here, can really give that commitment without going back to the executive. But it's a noble idea we should put forward, yes.
If I may, Mr. Moderator, I think what the member was suggesting was having a working document or a suggestion coming out of these workshops to actually give toward the executive to kind of guide and inform what the body or legislative branch would like to see going forward. If I interpret what you're saying correctly.
Yes, that is correct, because whilst many who are here are presiding officers, the charge can then be taken back to each of our countries. You know, I'm here in the capacity of Minister of Sustainability and Environment as well as Minister of Health. So for me, I'd like to know that I'm walking away knowing that we have, even if it's just some sort of informal arrangement, that we will establish a working call. Otherwise, I think that we're losing a great opportunity.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just like to piggyback, because I've heard this from both of the speakers and reiterated by my colleague here to my left. But I think if you lean on a lot of the universities in your countries, we have a consortium, we do a lot of grant writing workshops. There are several things that your universities do now in your countries, and I can say, because I'm a part of the consortium with several of your universities, that would give you data-driven results that will allow you to not reinvent the wheel, and you could just lean on them to ensure that some of the things that you're talking about actually transpires.
Thank you. I think they are noble ideas. I just want to caution. For example, I heard one of the speakers earlier spoke about the bill to autonomize Parliament. Trinidad and Tobago is also looking forward to doing that. The topic that's coming up has been on the CPA's agenda for nearly 25 years, and we discuss it every other year, because the reality is there is an incestuous relationship between members of the executive and cabinet and parliamentarians. And in small jurisdictions like ours, where the average size, maybe the largest we have, maybe Jamaica, of 60 members, the reality is nearly every elected member is a cabinet minister. So bills are already passed in cabinet and not parliament, because once they come to cabinet and cabinet says okay, and it's brought to the parliament, that's it. We talk and talk and talk, but the reality is we can't stop it. So I just wanted to caution that. But these are two good suggestions, and we can do that.
I have one more question. Nobody else has.
Any other?
I just have one more question.
Sure.
This one actually relates to the Carbon Credit Trading Act that Bahamas did. I did a little Google search, and I see that it was tabled by the Honorable Premier. I'm just curious, this might not necessarily be directed to the panelists, Honorable Jamal, but maybe for others around the room, just curious as it relates to this type of legislation, carbon credit, or anything to do with green funding. Are you all finding that that is being championed by the Minister of Finance or being championed by the Minister responsible for sustainability and environment?
In St. Lucia, both.
So it's like a cross-ministry approach.
Well, I also think in the Bahamas, our Minister of Finance is the Prime Minister. But the heads must champion the initiative. And then, of course, the line minister underscores and continues public education and other technical aspects of it. But I do believe without the head championing something so serious, it would fail.
If I may add a comment.
Sure.
I'm taking the points from my colleagues both to the my right here, and the comments that were made by Speaker Francis in reference that it's the executive that makes the decision. We get that. What we're looking for out of here, though, would be something that we could hold measurable that we want to take back to our respective parliaments to say, here's targets that we should be going at that are common for all of us in a sense. It's not, and as you look at the SDGs, and my friend up front in his presentation made much reference to the SDGs, there's no real benchmarks that have been set for the Caribbean under the SDGs. And so we don't fall in a category where we can turn to and say, here are benchmarks that we should be shooting for our small territories in the Caribbean. The benchmarks speak to the overall goal of the SDGs, but not to our region. So if we can find benchmarks, find targets, et cetera, so that we're not reinventing the wheel in how we go about these things is what could be helpful for us. taking these things back to our respective parliaments and governments.
Sure, yes. Yes, go ahead, Shaw.
I don't want to hog the mic. I think that hits exactly my concern. So from the Cayman Islands, whenever we refer to anything SDGs or UN, there's a lot of pushback from the public because, you know, we are a small Caribbean island. We are not a primary contributor to all of the, you know, emissions that are being spoken about. So I do think that it would be more impactful if we could bring it closer to home by having some sort of regional, as Speaker Lister spoke about, some regional benchmark to say this is what we are expected to do within the Caribbean region.
If I may. But to my colleague from Bermuda, while CARICOM, the Caribbean community, doesn't have a set of benchmarks, they do have a monitoring system set up right now that monitors and collects all of the achievements per member. So if we were to indirectly look at how each particular member is implementing the SDGs, because it's already consolidated, and it's consolidated in the CARICOM monitoring, evaluation, and reporting system for ease of reference. That's the framework that you could find a lot of the benchmarked initiatives by country, just to guide that.
Appreciate
Just to add to what Speaker Lister and our Cayman colleague, the entire Caribbean region contributes 0.2% to global greenhouse gases. 0.2. Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana each produce 0.12. So if you take off Trinidad and Guyana, the rest of us produce 0.06%. So you're quite correct that we produce little or nothing, but all the devastation is with us.
I agree with that totally. When you look at the percentage, we are a very small contributor.
Yeah.
But the impact of the global warming and those things have a major effect on us.
Absolutely.
And so that's why it's important for us to understand that even though we aren't a big contributor to the negative side, we feel the impact of it on the other side of it in a major way.
Absolutely, Speaker Lester. Yeah. Any other comments?
Yes, Michelle Slapp, Nevis, President of the Nevis Island Assembly. I was just going to comment that to a certain extent, we are
Speaker Slack, we can barely hear you up here. I don't know if you could turn up your microphone.
Is this better?
A little.
I was just saying that to a certain extent, we may not be privy to everything that is discussed at a CARICOM Heads of Government meeting. And at those meetings, I am sure that there are agenda items dealing with sustainability, the Sustainable Development Goals, climate change, and the like. And this is something that may impact our ability to implement cooperation or regional mechanisms to deal with these matters. I know for CARICOM, and I say this because the honorable member from the Cayman Islands mentioned that they're not a part of the CARICOM grouping, but there are some initiatives and measures that have been put in place by CARICOM to monitor the implementation of certain of these goals by certain timelines. So for instance, there was the 25 by 25 initiative that dealt with food production and our import bill, which has been extended. I think it's now 30 by 30. And that also includes certain other measurable goals that CARICOM as a grouping intends to achieve by that time. So I like the idea of leaving the meetings with suggestions, recommendations that we can make.
Yeah.
However, it is not lost on me that CARICOM heads may have already discussed and contemplated and put certain things in place for these matters. And then on a related point, we have different groupings within this body in itself. So there is the OECS, and OECS being smaller islands, maybe more aligned in terms of GDP, societal issues, and things of that nature. And as a result of that, there may be a greater ability for cohesiveness and for us to discuss how we would achieve certain things. Likewise, CARICOM, because the issues that are facing us may be the same. But we are also very different. So if we're looking at it from a climate change perspective, let's say, and that's just one matter in the Sustainable Development Goals, which I found we placed a lot of emphasis on to the exclusion of many others. But what crossed my mind during the course of the discussion was Guyana as well, who is now, recently engaged in more oil production, and how that island state differs from maybe a small island state, let's say Dominica, who may be more zealous about green energy, or Nevis, and think it's a Nevis, who is promoting geothermal energy. So we may be placing at the moment a greater emphasis on certain things geared towards climate change, while the reality on the ground for another island may not be the same. And this may create a little bit of a dichotomy between us in terms of how we want to set benchmarks, how we can cooperate to achieve what would be the Sustainable Development Goals in some aspects, but not to the exclusion of the others, since there are so many other things, as Speaker Blanchett would have mentioned, that are included in those Sustainable Development Goals. So there is room for cohesion, but it may be better if it is done within smaller groupings where the islands and states are more aligned. Thank you.
Yes?
Good afternoon, colleagues. Melvin Turnbull from BVI. I want to support the point from the minister from Cayman, in that we do these CPA meetings, international and regional, but on the regional side, we seem to always end where we're supposed to be picking up the next set of meetings. We end where we're talking about how we could more work collaboratively and form these steering groups. So I'm starting now and supporting the minister from Cayman and say, out of this very beginning session, we should start and create a steering group that takes us, as it relates to climate change, sustainable development, and all the other things, while the cabinet ministers would have their own objectives. But we on the regional side have to make a cohesive effort and not limit ourselves to what can't happen, because this is my 10th year as a parliamentarian, and it is like a cycle that we do every single conference, that we start from the beginning and at the end we say, okay, let's get to the place. Well, if we start now to see what is being done in Bermuda, in Cayman, in BVI, in other places that we can pull from, being different in our own respective jurisdictions, there are things that we can all pull from and help to build, so that we go to the next regional conference, and when we go and our territories go to COP and the Oceans Conference and all those things, we are having a more advanced conversation as parliamentarians, as delegates, to help our country and help our people go forward. So I am hoping that, Mr. Chair, that we could form a steering group out of this very first meeting for this specific thing, and then if we go to the other things like independence of parliament, let's do the same thing, because having the same conversation year after year may be good for some, but it's getting a little bit tiresome.
Yes, Cayman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank my colleague, Honorable Michelle from Nevis, right? I always mix up the two, for her contribution. And I want to say that I also see her point in the fact that CARICOM has already started. I just want to again highlight the concern that we have in the Cayman Islands and clarify. We are not a member state of CARICOM. We are an associate state. Yeah. But then, of course, we get left out of a lot of the comparative analysis. Same thing with SIDS. If you look at the list, the Cayman Islands is not there. So it would be good, all of you presiding officers would appreciate the benchmark exercise that the CPA has done for effective parliaments. And so even just something that could be aligned with what is being asked of CARICOM. We don't have to be prescriptive in what we're doing, but just to show that there is a push from the CPA region that we continue to try to meet the targets of the SDGs. And it's not just from the UN, but also from the Caribbean and, this region.
Thank you. I know we're just warming up, but I got a note that lunch is ready. So I just want to add to Speaker Slack's comment in that CARICOM just recently appointed Dr. James Jimmy Fletcher as its climate, who is one of the foremost climate advocates in the world, not just the Caribbean, as its point person. So yes, but your point is taken, and I will give you the commitment that before we leave here, I will have discussions with the Senate President to see if we can form this small committee from this meeting. So thank you very much for your contributions. Thanks to the two panelists whose contributions initiated such robust discussion. I'm told that the lunch is at the hotel we just came from, the one with all the vibes. Yeah, not this one. This one is almost like a little funeral home. The one with all the vibes. I'm actually looking to change rooms now. So if we can break now and go across for lunch from whence we came a little while ago. So thank you very much, everybody. Quite right. You're right, Nolin. You're right. But we'll form that committee. I already see 3 members. Jamal, you, and her. That's 3 members so far. But you did well, though. Very well. As Jamal's back. Jamal, you haven't registered yet?